I do a lot of work for Goldman Sachs. I've been teaching for them for now 17 years. I'm told I've saved as many businesses as I've saved marriages. I've never been married, which is hilarious. Negotiations is everything, from every decision to every conversation. Like the moment you get up and think about what you're going to wear that day, what your schedule's going to look like, who you're interacting with. It's how we speak our truth. It's how we protect our values. Somebody at Goldman said, I think you should write a book. But getting over the hump of perhaps I should write a book was the biggest negotiations of them all.
What is the biggest misconception about negotiating?
That it is incredibly transactional, that somebody wins, somebody loses. Negotiations, when done in a way that really taps into humanity, it feels like this beautiful sort of back and forth. It's like a tango. Every negotiations professor is going to tell you that preparation is important. And yes, you're going to get to the point where you're going to think about your goals and your outcomes and who that person is. But that very first step in preparation has to always be.
You're an author, you're a speaker, you're an entrepreneur, you're an educator and expert negotiating. When I think of negotiating, I think of the Bruce Willis movie, Hostage, right? Like immediately that's where, like FBI and all that stuff. I was in law before, so I know lawyers negotiate, sales negotiate, executives negotiate. That happens in the professional setting. But what is the most unexpected situation, everyday situation where just an average person negotiates?
The answer I'm about to give you is unexpected because people are expecting some big transactional thing and formal conference room kind of thing. But it's every decision we make every day is a negotiations, literally. From the moment you get up in the morning, think about what you're going to wear that day, to what your schedule's going to look like, to who you're interacting with. If you have kids, they're in your room probably already negotiating with you before you even get out of bed. I mean, literally, it's like the soundtrack of our lives. And so I see negotiations that way. I feel like it's so embedded in literally everything that we do, from every decision to every conversation. It's surprising for people, again, because there's no formality around it, but it really is technically the fabric of our lives.
What is the biggest misconception about negotiating?
That it is incredibly transactional, that somebody wins, somebody loses.
The win-win is not, it's not a win-lose situation, in your opinion.
Most people are fearful of negotiations. They have anxiety. And when you ask them why they have anxiety, they talk about conflict. They talk about, I'm so afraid of being on the losing end of things. I'm so afraid of the unknown. I'm so afraid of not having enough information. I don't want to be judged. There's all these things that they have in their heads, which has very much everything to do with transactional conversations and so little to do with sort of the humanity of negotiations. If that's the frame that I looked at negotiations through, then yeah, I would be incredibly anxious about it too, because I don't like transactional conversations. I don't love conflict. I don't like things in black and white. So I gravitate towards sort of conversations that are some shade of gray, that's curiosity based. I like the humanity of it. And so I think the biggest misconceptions are born out of this notion of it's purely transactional. Negotiations is beautiful. Negotiations, when done in a way that really taps into humanity, it feels elegant. It feels like this beautiful sort of back and forth. I always say to me, it's like a tango, the trust that you have in your partner, the movement, the reciprocal nature of it, the back and forth, the free-flowing nature of it, that there doesn't have to be an end to it, that this is sort of this ever-evolving relationship, the give and take. It's how we get to know people. It's how we speak our truth. It's how we protect our values. It's how we fight for our convictions. It's how we build bridges. It's how we form community. I mean, negotiations is everything. I have no idea why that just made me very emotional. But
me too. I'm looking at you. I'm I don't cry to you up.
But
yeah,
it
no,
is.
You're right. It is. And you make something so daunting and transactional and corporate-y seem so human. And I knew you said that. I'm literally using your word at this point. But yeah, it's very human, which I do feel we've lost, right, in our society today.
So it's funny. I was sitting in the car today coming over here, and said, you know what, let me just look back at some emails. And I mean, there's hundreds of these emails. The running theme. I mean, even those, there's the lease with the landlord, the buying the car, the buying a business from a business partner, exiting a business, bringing a product to market. Like there's all these different things. The subjects are different, but almost all of them. And then there's the marriage ones. Like, we were having a lot of trouble communicating. We were both thinking we're heading for divorce, or, like there's all of this, right? But sort of the running theme in all of it was I didn't know I could actually do this. And I didn't know I could actually be good at this. And you have taught me not to be fearful of it. Like the consequences. So you know how fear goes, right? Like we fear things because we start telling ourselves these stories.
Because you don't know what the outcome is going to be.
You don't know what the outcome is going to be. And it's always bad. Like the people who sort of, unfortunately, when we start like having these conversations in our head, the natural progression is always like a horror story.
Right. You assume it's going to be negative.
And the things you come up with, I'm like, like, is that really possible? And the answer is usually no, right? But it's sort of, it's like a snowball effect. And once you take that fear out of it and people start having different perspective on it, like first and foremost, I teach a class where like within probably minutes of starting the class, I can see people sitting up a little bit straighter. I can see them having this sense of confidence because, the conversation at the very beginning of class is you negotiate every day. These are transferable skills. It's, do you negotiate with your kids? Yeah. Okay. So you're a very experienced negotiator. You've been negotiating your entire life. So this isn't something new. This isn't something you have to relegate to somebody else to do for you because you speak this language every day. Those are all, in fact, negotiations. And everything I'm going to teach you is really the transferable nature of those skills to whatever it is that you are sort of in the midst of. But it's not something new. It's not something different. It's not something I've never in my life taught a class to people who were not experienced negotiators, whether it's my undergrads in college or whether it's my entrepreneurs or whether it's Fortune, 100 CEOs. Like they have all spent a lifetime doing something that they are not getting themselves credit for actually having experienced.
Wow. You wrote a book called Bring Yourself. It's about negotiating. What influenced you to write that book?
As with most decisions in my life, I had zero plans around it whatsoever. I never would have seen myself as an author. I was pre-med in college.
Oh, wow.
I would have done anything to take a test as opposed to write a paper because I wasn't really in love writing. So I started teaching, and which I know we'll get into, but I have a very kind of particular style of teaching. I do a lot of work for Goldman Sachs. I've been teaching for them for now 17 years. But a few years into my teaching and the feedback that they were getting from the students, somebody I very much look up to at Goldman said, I think you should write a book. I think what you do deserves sort of acknowledgement, and why not give people access to what you do? I was like, oh God, no. It was like literally my first response. I was like, me? No. Talk about negotiations. It took 4 years. So I got an agent very early on because I was like, I'm fighting it, but I also, like, why would anybody even think this of me?
How long did it take to write the book?
Not as long as 4 years. I mean, technically it did because it's, you go through the proposal phase and then you sell the book, and the research took a long time because we did a lot of interviews. Yeah. But getting over the hump of perhaps I should write a book was the biggest negotiations of them all.
Did you think that nobody would read it?
You always think that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are authors that are like, of course, I have so much to say and this will be a bestseller. But the way I operate at the time, because I was so unsure in the first place, I was like, at least we have relatives. Like somebody will buy this book.
Friends
give it away for free.
Yeah.
But yeah, you always think that. And there's sort of this, and then you wonder if people do, how will they receive it? What if everybody thinks it's terrible? So it's like all these
thoughts,
things that are going through your head.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
What made you originally start studying negotiation? Because you said you were pre-med. Originally you wanted to be pre-med.
Yeah, but then I went to business school. We left pre-med behind.
You went to business school, but what got you into I want to study this?
So I took negotiations as an elective in business school.
Okay.
It was my last semester of business school, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. When I was trying to figure out what next, and I had my company at the time, I was like, I don't know if I want to go back to my life as I know it. My professor at the time said, I think you should try teaching. I was like, and again, much like the book, I was like, I think you're crazy. I'm an introvert. I didn't like public speaking. Like none of that. In my head, I was like, this man is nuts. And so he's like, just try it. Like, just be a TA. See what you think. One class in, I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. I sort of fell upon it. I love the class. I learned so much about myself. I think it was the only class in business school that was so much, that gave me so much more about myself. Everything else felt sort of external, right? Like marketing and management and accounting and all that. Just, great business school education. That was the one, it was actually two classes. One was a communications one, like really sort of more like a clinic. But then this was negotiations, was incredibly thought-provoking for me.
When you were in those classes and you said that it's like something you immediately clicked with, did you ever ask yourself like, oh, I am a negotiator. I naturally do some of these things.
Yeah. But it's funny because I thought about it more from a transactional perspective when I was taking the class.
Was the class also doing that for you? More towards transactional?
Yeah, because you're doing, and we all teach in some ways, we all have different philosophies, but we use the same tools to teach it. So it's like negotiations, it's a combination of like lecture and exercises, because what you want, it's such a practical skill, as you know, that books alone, lectures alone, aren't really going to get you there, right? So the exercises are phenomenal because you get to apply what you're learning real time. And you're told not to act, so that the professor and yourself, you can really sort of, really understand and pick apart sort of what decisions you made, why you made them. It's such a great tool to use, but those negotiations are all transactional. So depending on the professor that you have, the conversations that come from looking at those exercises, like when you're debriefing them, then that really sort of gets layered with the philosophy of the professor. So when I was taking the class, I mean, it felt transactional, but what I learned about myself were things like I am super competitive. I made a lot of mistakes in that class because I was like, it's all about the win. It's all about the win. I made people angry. My friends were not happy with me. I mean, like it was so dramatic.
Can you walk us through maybe one or two?
Yeah, well, so one of the exercises, I won't give too much away because it's actually an exercise we all use, but there was 4 of us in the exercise, and I was like, I will win. I was the seller in the exercise. I was just like disgustingly, obnoxiously competitive. Like there's no other way. Like, what was I thinking? And my friends were so like, who is this person? Like, we've been friends for a year and a half. Where did you come from? And it was really strange because like you put me in that situation. You think about competition like when you're taking tests or what have you, it's like you competing with yourself. This was like, I don't even know who it was the craziest thing. So we come back to the class, we're debriefing, they're really upset with me, I'm apologetic. It was like really hard feelings for a while. And that was so eye-opening to me because I was like, okay, this can't be the way that you negotiate. Like, this is nonsensical. Think about reputations. Think about, this was friends, but what if these people never even knew me? Like the only snapshot of Mori that they would have is this, like very hyper competitive.
Kind of hostile, maybe?
Yeah, and it was like, who wants to be that person? So it was the mistakes in the class. It wasn't all like that. There were exercises I did really, really well with, but it was that notion of, here's something that we're doing in class that gives you such a great perspective on yourself because we so rarely get. And it's the debriefing, it's getting the feedback from other people real time. So I really enjoyed that part of the class, but it was pretty funny. Like when I think about it in retrospect, I was like, who was that person? I know there's like layers of competitiveness in me. I know that. But the fact that in my head, that's how I had seen technically what negotiations meant to me at the time. And I've evolved in so many different ways since then. But it was the mistakes. It was how do your actions affect other people?
Yeah. Your words, your actions, all of it. What made you decide to turn this into a profession? Because that's not normal.
No, it's not normal.
How do you know that that's what you want to be?
I did the TAing and then I got my teaching appointment shortly after I graduated. And the first few years, I mean, it was fun. I was teaching undergrads at Wharton. They're super, super smart. It felt like such a privilege, but it also felt, first of all, it's like I'd never dreamt of doing something like this. And the fact that somebody had believed in me enough to give me this platform, I was like, wow, this is incredible. So I took it very seriously. I was always nervous going into the classroom because I felt the weight of responsibility of these 30, at the time it was 36 students, and then they increased so then it became 48 students, but I felt very responsible for them. And I remember being very by the book. So like, stick to the syllabus. This is what happens in every class. Like it was very much a performance. And after 3 years, and I was commuting, by the way, every week, once a week from California to teach to Philadelphia. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
So the dues were paid. And like going into that third year, I was like, what am I doing? And I was working, I still had my company at the time, but I was like, this is not fun. In a lot of ways, it's like nerve wracking, right? But I was like, but before I say no to this, I need to find my own voice. And throughout this process, throughout getting to know all these incredible students, and a lot of soul searching that I started really doing when I took negotiations at Wharton as a student, but really trying to understand myself and what does this thing mean to me, right? What is this practice? What's its importance in my life? I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this now my way, like, because negotiations in my life played such a huge part of like my decisions, like really big conversations, a lot of them including my family. And I was like, I'm going to be authentic, and I can't be a nervous wreck every time I teach this. And I want to breathe. I want to do with these kids what I think is right, what I think they should actually be hearing that I don't think they're getting enough of in school.
Oh, so you wanted to shake it up a little bit.
Yes.
And kind of disrupt what negotiations is and how it's taught.
Yeah.
Generally across the board.
So that was 2007.
Okay.
And it was my first teaching award. Came that year.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Were you supported in doing this?
Oh, yeah.
Like with the faculty?
Yeah. I mean, you didn't do
schools?
anything crazy because you were still doing the exercises and what have you. But
you met no resistance.
No.
Okay.
No, because you still had to cover. You're teaching the 13 classes. You're teaching the curriculum. You have to cover certain things, right? But it was the conversations. Again, I think it's the philosophy of your professor that comes through during those discussions. Because lecturing is one thing, but because you cover, specifically a lot of the foundations. I mean, every negotiations professor is going to tell you that preparation is important, right? Setting goals is important. Understand your counterpart. Like all those things are like foundational. Yeah. But it's what you do with those things and how you communicate it, and the relevance that you give certain things that changes the climate of the class, but also the way people, I think, receive it. And that's what changed. So I started telling them more about my life. I became really vulnerable. Then every class I'm crying, I'm a mess. Then I started having so much fun. I so fell in love with these 3 hours every week. And I got goosebumps thinking about it, but I couldn't wait. I was still exhausted because I'm commuting, but I couldn't wait to be there because I realized that I was my most authentic self in the classroom.
Let's go back for a second. That's not common for teachers to be vulnerable in that setting or share personal details or anything for that matter, even for teaching purposes. I've never come across that myself.
Yeah.
But I will say, and I think, when was this? What year was this?
That was 2007.
I don't really remember. No, I don't think this was a thing back then. Yeah, social media was not a thing, being vulnerable. Today, being vulnerable, like think about marketing, right? Or selling something. That's a gift.
Yeah.
If you can be vulnerable and share something, your message is going to hit more people. Right. It's going to be easier. So I can only imagine what those students felt like. Hey, here's our teacher, like sharing all of this stuff, and just, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was, so somebody always cries in my class, or I cry in my class, or we all cry in my class, but it was...
You still teach that way?
Oh yeah, and more so. I mean, with every year you get more confident, and now I'm so firmly bought into this message, and I take, I don't know, the word privilege just keeps coming to me, but I take it so seriously, and I feel like, how am I going to ask them to be authentic if I can't be authentic? And literally, I think I am the best of myself, and more so because I'm my most authentic self in the classroom.
You just said something that sparked something. You said, "How can I ask them to be authentic?" Because right, the whole thing is like you have to bring your whole authentic self to a negotiation. This is not a transaction. This is a human connection. How can I teach them this if I can't bring myself here? And just earlier today, I was talking to my director, and I was like, I have to share some personal things on the show because if I'm asking people to sit here and open up their lives, and here I am not doing the same, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The therapy is back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like that's the human connection as well. Which now I can see that in a negotiation, how that's important. What makes someone a very good negotiator? If you were just give me one thing.
Curiosity.
Ah.
I mean, there are so many things, but I think above all, I would say curiosity.
If I think of a negotiation, I like freeze. Like, I'm like, what? You know, like you're like ready for battle. But if it's just you're curious.
So like kids are great negotiators, right? Like,
how so?
Well,
I think they just throw tantrums and try to get what they want.
But they always usually end up getting what they want too. But they come into this world, I always say, like, nobody has told a child, like, you don't have a place at this table. Like, who do you think you are? Or you don't have a right to ask for this. So like for them, it's like free reign, right?
But that's experience, right? That other people project on kids. Adults project on kids.
Oh yeah, and where as adults, like as women, we're told like you don't have a seat at this table. Yeah, as kids, they're like, what table? And it's my seat, right? And
my
so
world. You're living in my
world. And they're curious. So like I was saying in class, I'm like, when you tell a kid no, it's not the end of the world. Like that doesn't stop the conversation. They don't feel a sense of personal rejection. You know, immediately they go into the why. You know, they want to know why you just said no. They want to continue this conversation because I think in their heads, they're like, we will end up at yes. Mm-hmm. We're just going to try to figure this out. And like, so they're constantly learning through the process. And I think that, and studies show this, that throughout life, we lose our curiosity.
So then you're saying naturally we are curious. Naturally we are negotiators. We will stand there and figure this out. But over time, we learn the fear. Over time, we become small.
Yeah, we become small. We stop being curious about things because I think that we become really certain about things. Mm-hmm. This notion of allowing yourself to not have to have answers, but just really having sort of this like learning mindset is sort of lost as we age. We don't leave room for it. And even like in our politics and what have you, like everybody has to have assuredness. Everybody has to have like, and even if you're talking to somebody, I have to change your mind as opposed to, I'm just really curious why you think that way. And again, studies really do show this that I'm so enthralled by this notion of curiosity, but you know, people are happier when they're curious, that there's longevity of life, because your brain is constantly working. It's learning, right? And I think the relationships are better as opposed to people coming into every relationship very certain, as opposed to leaving room for understanding and curiosity. So I think it's crucial. And I just think we lose it after a while.
You said something about curiosity, and it's like, I think curiosity is one of the, is a way to stay young, and especially like physically as well. Mm-hmm. Mind, of course, but I've noticed that all the individuals that are, 40s, 50s, 60s that work out, but like do a different workout all the time. Yeah. One year they'll pick up box. I'm not talking just going hitting the bag. Like you get an instructor to teach you the technique of how, if you were to be a professional boxer, learn tennis, learn this, start to learn a new board game with your friends. They not only look younger, when you speak to them, they're like, yeah, I feel like I'm 21. Yeah. Because they're using this.
Your brain is constantly sort of trying to figure out this new thing.
Yeah.
Your body appreciates that as well, right? Because you're using different skills.
You're creating new pathways in your mind, which I talk about all the time on this show. But like, it's like all about progress and not being stuck in your routine.
Yeah.
Which is very easy for all of us to do.
Because it's easy. Like you said, it's easy.
It's uncomfortable to do new things, right?
Uncomfortable to do new things, but also with that comes the difficulty of having to learn new things.
Yeah, we think we can't learn something. When we're out of school, it's like we don't want to learn something new.
Right.
Which now, it's like when I say that out loud, it's kind of strange. Like, why not?
Again, it's work.
Yeah.
Right? And so much of our lives these days, it's so easy to not have to do work, right? Like, You want food, so like where I live, Whole Foods is literally 3 blocks from my place. And I'm very active. Like I work out all the time and what have you. But the pandemic made it really easy because they would deliver. It's 3 blocks. Like I'm not kidding. But Trader Joe's happens to be like literally at the bottom floor of my building, right? Like I can go there in pajamas kind of thing. So now when I want something from Whole Foods, for a while there, I was like, maybe I should just have them deliver. And I'm like, are you ridiculous? It is 3 blocks. But I realized like the ridiculousness of it is that we make everything so easy. Like you don't have to work, right? You use an app, you get the food. You need a car ride, you call Uber. Like everything's instant gratification, and the ease of that. I mean, even AI, right? This notion of not having to put forth a lot of effort.
Use your brain.
Makes it really easy.
ChatGPT and all of those. And that could be a whole other episode on that. What does win-win really mean to you in negotiation? Because I think of negotiation, I think like someone's winning, someone's losing, or you're compromising. You say it's a win-win.
Compromise is win-win technically, because two people are not going to get everything that they want. So when you hear win-win, I mean, ever so rarely is it we both got exactly everything that we wanted, right? Win-win just means you've compromised. The skill set is that you are going to give up the things that are not very important to you, and vice versa, right? So the things that may be less important to you and more important to the other person, that's the compromise. Ultimately, you're both walking away. You've given up something, but hopefully not the most crucial things. And within that sort of that overlap, if you will, of interests, you've found a space, no matter how big or small it is, but you found that space that you both are okay with having given up something. People refer to win-win also meaning like both people are walking away equally unhappy because you've both given up something. But you've compromised ultimately.
Yeah. You speak about top core principles on philosophy. Can you touch on those, like what they are?
In the book, I talk about really these 4 things, which is that negotiation is something that you do every day. It's, like I said, soundtrack of our lives, that anybody can be a great negotiator. It's not about the transaction, it's about human connection. And maybe where I put probably the most emphasis in my work is that you can't be a good negotiator unless you know your value.
Wow. When you put it this way, negotiations or negotiating is not a negative thing. You're almost trying to be, you said curious, but also knowing yourself, right? Like you have to know yourself. You have to know your values and whatnot. And then I'm assuming your non-negotiables, which brings me to my next question. What are non-negotiables in terms of negotiating?
Generally, our values.
Is it safe to say that we have to, because not everyone knows themselves.
No.
And not everyone's clear on their boundaries or who they are, what they are, and even as basic as what I like and don't like.
Yeah.
You're saying that that's the foundation.
Oh yeah, it's the beginning of all wisdom. So in preparation, the way I look at preparation and negotiations is that, yes, you're going to get to the point where you're going to think about your goals and your outcomes and who that person is and preparing for that. But that very, very first step in preparation has to always be getting a really good understanding of who you are at that moment in that space. Part of that is your non-negotiables, like, my values, because values are really interesting in negotiations in the sense that we end up compromising, right? We end up giving things up, but you don't ever want to give those things up, because at the end of the day, if you, it's like betrayal, it's like self-betrayal, right? At the end of the day, if you give up your values, which could entail treating somebody in a way that you didn't want to treat, maybe lying, and it's sort of against your values. But if you do that, no matter what the outcome is, no matter how good the outcome is technically, you're not going to feel good about it. You're not going to feel happy because you gave up the very thing that feels like the air that you breathe, your essence, right? So, and to your point, it's really interesting because we don't spend that time thinking about those things, and then everything's on the table.
Well, no one teaches you this, right? No one
No,
says, like, what are your values?
no,
Get
we
to
don't.
know you first, like, focus on you and ask
It's
yourself what it is that you want in your
right.
life and then go from there.
Exactly.
People spoon feed things to
Right.
you. They tell you what to do, what they think you should do.
Yeah.
They
And if you,
project on you too.
but that's why I don't think like negotiations should be performative, nor do I think teaching the skill should really sort of reinforce that notion of performing. But the other part of knowing who you are and really spending that time is that, there's also the emotional preparation for it as well, right? You could have had a really bad morning. You could have gotten into a fight with a loved one before you left the house. You could have gotten stuck in traffic. Any one of those things. Maybe it's a day that you don't feel so good about yourself, that you're really having these self-doubts and the way you're speaking to yourself is not coming from a place of love and acceptance. Unfortunately, when you're not aware, all of that comes into that door with you. Like all those feelings are sitting at the table right next to you. And so what you're projecting is coming from that place. And so this taking the 10 minutes, taking the 20 minutes, taking whatever time it is to think about what are my non-negotiables? Where am I in my head? Like getting yourself straight. I always say it's like setting intentions in yoga, like finding that center, right? Because if you can leave things at the door, if you can put those aside, and hopefully some of those things you're not carrying with you, period, that you get the therapy, you get the work done. But if you could do that and you walk in with clarity, then one, you are more present, you're more mindful, you have far more emotional intelligence because you don't have the baggage of all these things. And you know who you are. You fight for what's important to you.
You mentioned how you can have like self-negative talk as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go into that a little bit for me and how that can sabotage a negotiation and what we can do to change that?
Yeah, I think this is like the core of it all, to be honest with you. I do mindset work in negotiations. That's really the so where my teaching comes from, because I think mindset is everything. Many of us, me included, we have a lot of demons. We're fighting a lot of things. When you don't understand your value, right? When you don't know your worth, when you are not coming from a place of self-acceptance, when you carry all those things, and those things come from so many different things. It could be divorces, it could be childhood trauma, it could be anything, loss, grief, shame. That's where your mindset is. Then this notion of setting goals in negotiations, which are really important, right? So knowing what you want is very important, but being aspirational about those things, meaning, you shouldn't limit your dreams. You shouldn't limit your wants and your desires. That you should have a mindset of abundance, that all things can be possible, right? Those people are the ones who actually do really well in negotiations because it's boundless, right? They're not tethered to what's not possible, but instead come from a place that I can manifest any of these things, right? So it's no doubt why they do so well. But if you are a person who places limits on yourselves because your thinking is so limited, right? You don't understand your own worthiness, then your goals, your dreams are going to reflect that. Right? So I am not worthy. I do not deserve. Why me? Right? Who's going to pay those prices for my products? Who's going to write a check for this? Who wants to be in this relationship with me? Like everything is, cast around this notion of self-doubt. Your goals are impeded, right? Your dreams are limited. And then as the nature of negotiations go, what you ask for reflects those goals. So you don't ask for enough and you don't get enough. And so that's how it all works.
Is this why people pleasers struggle with negotiating?
People pleasers are really interesting to me. I think people pleasers sort of get a bad rap. I think they can be really great negotiators, actually, because at their core, they have the essentials. And by that I mean, people pleasers tend to be emotionally intelligent because they pay attention to people they care about, people they work with, right? That's their nature. So I want to know what you want. I want to know what makes you happy. I'm going to pay attention to that. They have great sense of empathy, quite caring oftentimes, right? But the problem with people pleasers, So you want all those elements in negotiations that I just talked about. But the problem is that they don't turn those things around on themselves. They don't have empathy for themselves. They put their needs last. Even this notion of self-reflection is quite limited because you're spending all your time thinking about other people. So I always say, you've got all the makings, but you need to do that first for yourself, unapologetically, and then take care of other people. And if you do that, you're going to be this tremendous negotiator. It's just that your pitcher is always empty. You're always pouring into all these people and you're not pouring into yourself. And then that has its consequences, right? So people pleasers don't like conflict.
Yeah.
So they avoid conflict at all costs.
Sometimes they actually, not conflict, they want to confront you immediately and speak about something. What would you call that? Confrontation or conflict?
More confrontational.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they need to know what just happened.
Right.
And then fix it immediately.
Right. But that's because something happened, right? But if they can avoid it, then they will do everything they can to bring resolution ahead of time. So you're right, because they can't live with the fact that you're not happy with me.
Right.
What's wrong? How can I fix this? Right? Yeah, absolutely. But most of the time, what they're trying to do is do anything they can to avoid that conflict in the first place, right? So it's this notion of pleasing. But the problem is that, no good relationship is without conflict. And unfortunately, if you keep putting these things off, right? Or your counterpart will take advantage. People will take everything you have to give them, right? Nobody takes anything from you that you don't give up. And you keep giving, and you keep giving, and you keep giving. So then at some point, you're like, well, this person keeps taking. You start resenting them. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, it's not their fault. You allowed that to happen. And then you figure that out, and then you start resenting yourself. And you're like,
I did it.
Oh, yeah, I did
My
this
fault.
to myself. Oh, my God. Yeah, I'm like, why did I do that? I'm so stupid. So there's this horrible cyclical nature of resentment. It's hard. It's really hard because, like I said, I think that people pleasers have all the makings, right? Boundaries are not a thing for people pleasers. Like you say boundary to a people pleaser, they will immediately think conflict. I'd rather not. I'd rather just go along to get along. The thing to do is to think about boundaries as an act of compassion. That's what boundaries are. It comes from a place of compassion for yourself.
We talked about curiosity, and it sparked something you just said sparked it for me. When negotiating with individuals who have significantly different values than us, I think it's very hard to be curious when that's the case. And myself included.
Oh, yeah.
And it actually happened yesterday on a call where it was a discovery call actually for something. And I started to shut down 30 minutes into the call because this individual's values just were so different than mine. And my curiosity went out the door. I started walking around, and my director was on the call, and I was like, yeah. And I was already no. So how do you stay curious in those moments?
It's so hard. It's really hard. It's happened to me lately. I won't get into it necessarily, but I've been found myself in situations over the past few weeks, conversations of a political nature. And it definitely was not easy. Definitely was not. It was such a test of myself because these things are very emotional. And, we live in troubling times and there's a lot of conflict. It was bringing up things in me, but I kept saying to myself, they're not going to agree with you and you are not going to agree with them. But then I found myself, I kept asking questions. Most people, and probably a normal person would be like, I'm done talking to this person. But then I was like, test yourself. So I just kept asking questions. And I didn't like any of the answers necessarily. The answers weren't getting any better. But I learned things. It reinforced certain things. It told me about this person. And I found myself walking away, to be honest with you, with less sort of that anger that I had at the beginning of the conversation, because I spent the time and kind of understood some things about them, maybe why they were the way they were. But again, I wouldn't choose to be in a relationship with this person. I wouldn't choose to necessarily have a friendship with this person. But I wasn't worse off because of it. And I really forced myself, because I realized that it's so easy to just say, screw it, I'm just gonna walk away. At the end of the conversation, it was really funny, because it was a very hard conversation. And at the end of the conversation, she's like, you know what? Thank you. It's so much easier to speak to you than it is with one of the members of their family. I really appreciate that about you. And
Wow.
I was like, I mean, thanks, but I just went through like an hour of trauma here, but thank you so much. I'm exhausted, but thank you. But it was really strange, because the entire time I was like, Mori, just stop asking questions. What is wrong with you? Like, in my head, but I was fascinated. I was like, how do you get here is what I really, in my head, wanted answered. It wasn't personal satisfaction. It wasn't gratifying. I wanted to see if I could sort of practice what I preach. And I wanted to stay patient in that moment. I understood her.
I was going to ask you, like, how did it end? Like, so for me, it's like, I walked away from the conversation, right? But the nature of that also was that it wasn't a fit for me.
Right.
Because my messaging is very open, a lot of open-mindedness, I would say. And to allow people to be who they are and hold space for them. And that was not where this was going.
Right.
But if that was family or if that was friends, maybe like that's how I would approach it. But like, who am I kidding? Sometimes I walk away from it too.
Yeah, it's.
But you felt good.
The whole situation made me sad, to be honest with you. But I felt like it would be a really difficult life right now. The preponderance of people who take these positions anyway. And if I was to walk through my life in these moments and have that kind of visceral reaction to everybody, like, I'd be exhausted. And the difference between our two situations was that, so you had a decision to make and it was of consequence to you. This person's thoughts were of no consequence to me. They gave me, like I said, they validated certain thoughts that I had, but they also, just gave me more information, I should say. But I wouldn't have chosen, like I said, to be in a personal relationship with this person. I didn't have to make a business decision about it. It had no consequence in that way. But when we have conflict, when we get emotional, right, those things come from a place of something's really important to us, right? It has gravity. And if it didn't, you could just walk away from it. But when something can change the trajectory of your work or a project or a relationship, then that's where we get emotional. And that emotion is feeding us. It's telling us this is important. It's telling us that you should exercise your right to be in this or not be in this. But even then, like, yelling and screaming is not going to get you anywhere, right? No. You could just hang up the call and say, thank you so much. This isn't going to work.
Yeah, now you're hurting yourself.
Right.
Right? Like, getting upset about something like that. Because then I think when we resist, we're coming from a place of we're judging them for how they are. We're going beyond what needs to happen, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, it's not for me. We're moving on. But I also think sometimes we get caught up in, like, you're trying to change their mind. And you just can't fathom, like, how does someone think like this?
No, and
how does someone utter these words, and make such blanket statements? But it's not your job to change the world in that. You can't.
You can't.
And we have black and white, and we have, red, and like we have like this up and as below. Yeah. What is that saying? So above or as below. Like, you have opposites, right? And that's just the nature of our world. But how to sit with it and be okay with it, or be curious like you were, and move through it with grace, I think it's a skill.
And we have to do it. Like, I find myself, like, I'm trying not to watch the news as much, because
the news?
I'm like screaming at the TV, right? Because that I can't take.
I don't watch the news, and I know that's a big statement to make, but I don't like the news, and I don't watch it.
Good for you. So I am on a news diet of sorts, because I also live in DC, so it's sort of hard not to. But I am relishing in this news diet of mine, actually, because it's making me so much more sane. But that, I can disagree. The point is, like, with somebody on the screen, and I'm like, you idiot, whatever. But that's not the interactions we have with human beings, right? And so, to your point, if we let go of this notion of, by the way, none of this stuff is easy, period. Like, it's really easy for me to sit here and say this, but But acknowledging that, if we stop thinking that I must change your mind, we'd be a lot happier. Like, that can't be the goal.
Yeah.
If the goal is, I think you're insane, but I want to know why, like, I want to know more about why it is that you're thinking this way, then, it becomes interesting. And by the way, they're not the only person. So, like, you're learning about maybe a whole community of people.
Yep.
Right? Because if everybody thought like us, we wouldn't be in this world of ours.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like we have no choice.
It does make it. My mom always says all these differing opinions and whatnot makes the world colorful. So don't
For
try
good
to
or
go
for
around-
bad.
Yeah. Don't try to fix anything.
Right.
What is the most crucial thing to consider when we're preparing for a negotiation?
What we just talked about before is really knowing yourself.
Preparing. So just know yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the beginning of it all. Having a really good understanding.
You think therapy helps with that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a big proponent of therapy?
Absolutely.
Me too. But I'm like a newbie at it, so I'm like all about it right now.
Yeah, I'm choosy, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not like I've been in therapy for all my life kind of thing. Like, you sort of know when you need help. How do you feel about it?
I love it.
It's great,
Yeah.
right?
I started in January or February, and I feel as though I'm very type A personality, and I'm very much in my head, but I'm at a point where I'm very self-aware, like, hey, get out of the loop and focus on the present moment and all of that. But I always expect people, this is going to the negotiation thing, I expect people to assume what it is that I want.
Right.
Because I think that I have relayed 100 times.
Yeah.
You just don't hear me.
Right.
And that's a communication problem. And then it all also goes back to like how never really had much of a self-image or worth thing. I'm kind of like okay in that department. And I know my values and my core values and stuff, but I have it's to the communicating human part where sometimes I think like my legal mind kicks in and looks at everything as a transaction. And that's where I trip up. Like even with my husband sometimes I'm like, hey, can you do this XYZ? And he's like, okay. And then I'm like looking at him
like now.
Like in my head I'm like, no. And then if he doesn't do it, I get up and go do it, right?
Right.
I'm curious now, what does negotiation look like in a marriage? I mean, we do have scenarios where people get divorced, right? We do have scenarios where relationships break up. Would a negotiation save those?
Absolutely. Because negotiations is communications. Negotiations is problem solving. That's all negotiations is. It's a conversation. Some are harder than others. Some of them maybe erupt in some form of conflict. By and large, most of them are just conversations. Now, it's really interesting because I'm told I've saved as many businesses as I've been told I've saved marriages probably, and I've never been married, which is hilarious. But I think negotiations in a marriage, I think that's the curiosity. And I think that sort of the everlasting curiosity, because I think that when you feel like you know somebody, you stop listening. You're sort of filling in the blanks. Like I know how this person feels, so why do I need to?
We're assuming.
Yeah, it's like chock full of assumptions. And the mistake in that is that we're ever evolving. Like think about just what the pandemic did to us. Like we're completely different people today than we were 5 years ago. Hell, maybe 2 years ago. And so if you don't leave that room for growth for someone, no matter how much you feel like you've known them, you are missing things. And so like when, a husband and wife are talking, or whatever couple are talking to each other and they get into some kind of an argument, they're like, it's as though you don't hear me. It's probably that you don't hear them. It's probably that you stop listening. I think that the loss of the curiosity, the ease of assumptions make for pretty unhappy marriages because you lose communications. You're not learning anymore. The person's evolving, but you're not even learning about it.
Do you mind sharing with me an example of someone that transformed their negotiation by applying your approach?
Yeah, we haven't necessarily talked about this yet, but one of the sort of fundamental stages of negotiations, right, where we've talked about sort of preparation and the actual act itself of the transactional part, the bargaining. So before that sort of second stage of negotiations is what we call information exchange. And It's actually, to me, as important as preparation, and probably my favorite thing to teach, because I feel like when people really understand the value of it and really invest in it, it's sort of the biggest game changer, I think. And I've seen that over and over and over again. Like if there are two things that I would attribute the greatest changes to, one of them is definitely this. And it's this notion of, after you prepare, when you first meet somebody, you're not jumping right into the negotiations. You're actually spending time getting to know this person. So this is literally all about, who is this person? How do I get to know them? And not in the sense of like, what is it that you want from this, but more in the sense of the human, right? Like the person sitting in front of you. Are they a father? Are they a mother? Are they, what are their interests? Maybe you see some memorabilia, sports memorabilia in their office, and you talk to them about sort of fandom and sports. Whatever it is that sort of allows you to create, otherwise referred to as small talk,
I was
but
just
not.
about to say that. I'm like,
It is.
Sounds like small talk.
It
and
is.
I'm allergic to small talk.
You can't possibly be if this is what you do for a living.
You
Because
think so? Oh, okay.
small talk, when it's authentic, it's not performative. Small talk really is this notion of, I don't want anything from you. I just want to learn something from you. I want to know more about you. Yeah. And when it's authentic, it's just that. It's really focused on that human. So we hear small talk and people are like, oh God, that's like the worst thing, because we start thinking, what does this person want from me? Like very transactional, used car salesman-y kind of thing. But when small talk is authentic, it means I'm interested in you, not for this transaction. That'll come. I'm interested in you because you are a person sitting in front of me that has something to offer in terms of understanding and maybe something interesting, right? And I think the other part of this, so aside from you getting information, the other part of this that's important is that person feels really good when they think that you're coming from a place of genuine interest and authenticity. Like you said earlier, I hold space for people. You're holding space for them, right? You're giving them this gift of attention and understanding that they probably didn't even expect, because they thought, what is this person going to want out of me? And you're saying, well, we'll get there. But for right now, I just want to get to know you, right? Who you are sitting in front of me. And when you do this, and this goes back to, can I give you an example? I've seen this have impact in ways that I probably never even expected myself, but now I've seen really the importance of it, is that, there's a marriage story where I had a student who was like deep in the throes of conflict with his significant other. It really had a lot to do with sort of how they were raising their child, more specifically about punishment. You've got one parent who's very old school, and you got to give them something, give them a little beating when they do something wrong, right? Then you've got the other parent who's like, absolutely not, like the more, what I call like the timeout parent, right? And this was becoming like a huge issue, because the person who was more like, absolutely not, you're not laying a single finger on this child, that's not how this kid is going to learn, like was having a visceral reaction to it. Like this went well beyond just like, no, I don't really want that. The thought of it was very visceral for them. It was becoming really bad. And so I was like, but why? Like, don't you want to know why the reaction is so visceral? Like, so before you go into this notion of like negotiating how you're going to raise or parent this child, I think it's kind of interesting that the reaction is so dramatic. So he's like, I never even thought about asking. I just thought like, we just disagree. I was like, why don't we try this a different way? Why don't you just ask, right? Why don't you get to know more about this before you get into because the negotiations is, how are we going to do this, right? How are we going to parent? How are we going to punish? So, a week later, he comes to class and he's like, you just saved my marriage. He's like, it was visceral because of her experiences. Like, there is trauma there that I never knew about. And so it's an immediate jolting of her, that feeling. Like it brings back those things that she's just never shared, but I've also never asked. I just was like, this is crazy. Like, you know.
It's very touching because I'm assuming it was a woman who had the visceral reaction. And then just like, how did she feel when he asked her and she finally was able to like voice, you know, like,
Yeah.
this is why, because maybe she didn't even think about it
Right.
until he asked her.
Exactly.
It was just like a reaction.
Right.
And we all do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I do it every day. Like that's why I'm in therapy. Like I react to things that are said or done around me sometimes. Or like they're internal, but they're physical. And it's like, oh, it's because of this. You know, and then it
Yeah.
just kind of, and then what my husband gets a glimpse of little Nina, you know, like that's what she went through and that's
Right.
why it happened. And vice versa, right?
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Now it's like he gets a glimpse of little Nina as
Right.
to why, and then like same with him, like I get to see like that little boy went through XYZ and now as an adult, that's why.
Right.
And that's where therapy comes in
Right.
and helps. And I actually see this one thing on Instagram all the time where it's like, let's ask your partner what's one pain that they wish they could take away from you. And like neither knows like what's going to be said, and it's kind of like on the fly and random.
Right.
And almost always ends up in a very emotional
Of course.
ending, but that gets me every time, and that's what this just reminded me
Yeah.
of.
Because we also, it hurts to conjure up those things again, right? It's hard to bring those up, and people want to push down those things, right? It's really exhausting to live in pain that way every day. So if you've pushed it away, she may not have even known that that's the origins of this, right? It was just that sort of, again, that's visceral reaction. You know, so it's stories like that, but it comes from, it's funny because most people, when they think about negotiations, they think about preparation, they think about transactional bargaining. And here's this space in between the two that is magic. If transactional bargaining is what creates anxiety, because it's things like money or things that are just, nobody really loves talking about, right? That back and forth. Here's the space that says, that's not even important right now. Like, yeah, we'll get there. And yet it's everything, because it's not just a nice to do, right? But it's actually quite strategic, because you're really learning about somebody. You're learning their wants, their needs, their interests, right? You're learning maybe where they are in that space of time, because all those things then feed decision making. It's in my book. It was one of those moments where I was like, wow, we actually really don't listen to each other anymore. We actually don't ask the questions. Like, it's assumptions, like we talked about earlier, are easy, right?
Do you also think it's because we're not present? Some of that, because we're just not.
Yes.
We're like there to finish people's sentences. We're there to assume, not being curious,
Right.
like you mentioned, and then like just not there. Like, and myself included, right? Like no one's
Right.
perfect. Like you're just not present because you're thinking about the next thing you got to do or what you just. You know what I mean? It's just-
Absolutely.
I think we just need to all, as a society, be more present as well.
Yeah.
That would help not being transactional, I think.
It would help not to be transactional, but we're very efficient. Our society is quite efficient. Like in this country, everything is fast. Everything is,
It's all around convenience.
Yeah.
Even if it's detrimental to you or to your health or to your relationships or life, it's convenient.
Yeah.
And that's what they sell it to you.
yeah. And it's quick, and it's, you know, you work. We live to work. Everything's fast. The relationships are fast. It's fast food. It's, you know, you're not even going into places to get your coffee anymore. You're ordering it in off your app. Like, it's like there's no slowing down. Information exchange absolutely requires you to slow down. Like, you know, like examples in business. I've seen so many incredibly successful sort of outcomes from this process, because people are like, I didn't even know there was such a thing. Like, you know, the guy calls my business and it's like, how much? And I tell them. I'm like, well, what about finding out who they are first before you ask the how much? Like, what do they want? What are they looking for? Who are they? Right? Where do they live? Like, just these things that like humanize people. But, you know, and in some ways, people are reticent, because I'm saying you have to increase the timing of your sales cycle, right? But what comes with that is maybe business in perpetuity, maybe relationships, maybe referrals, maybe, like so much more. But it's an investment in time, and that many people don't really think to do, nor does it it's not really consistent with the way we live and work. Whereas this actually, if you go anywhere else in the world, they do business that way. Information exchange is like, look, we're going to do a lot of this, and then we'll decide if we even want to go into a transaction, because that is not guaranteed.
You are so right. So the nature of my husband's business requires that, like in different countries and whatnot. And you see, they're all about relationship building, getting to know you, weeks, months, years. It's years.
Right.
And although we have a bit of when I say we, I mean Americans, we like, oh my God, it's going to take so long, right? But they look at it as like an investment. They actually want to know you.
Oh, yeah.
They want to meet your wife and kids.
Absolutely.
They want to learn how you eat, how you sit, how you do things, so that, I don't know, that they can, that human connection. But it makes sense. Why would you want to do business with somebody that you don't know?
You don't even know. Because a lot of times you're like, I don't really have to. Like, when am I ever going to see this person again? Right?
That's so sad. Like, it's so mean. It's mean and sad at the same time.
Well, yeah, but if you think about it, as sales go, right? A lot of times we think, oh, even when I have students in my class who are like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it's not like I'm never going to do business with this person again, right? Or like I was in a country and I was buying a rug from this person. Like, Mori, why does that matter? And I'm like, well, first of all, anytime we think we're never going to see somebody again, we see them.
That's true.
Right? The next thing is that I believe when we say, I'm never going to see this person again, it gives us an excuse to behave badly.
Yes.
Because there's no consequences to our actions, right? What do I care, right? So that's the second thing. The third thing is, I don't know. I just think people are far more likely to give you better deals when you treat them a certain way. I do believe that that's a far more relatable way of doing business than for you to bully somebody into giving you something that at the end of the day is only going to benefit you and not them. And it's a much more difficult conversation. So why not show the grace, show the kindness, right? This is their craft. This is their living. And just there are certain things to me that, look, there are many ways to negotiate. And nobody's really wrong. Everybody has their own ways. There are plenty of people that do really, really well negotiating that way. I just feel like, what's the point? Like, why do you have to make somebody feel that way? And I like the easier path, to be honest with you, than to force feed somebody into that.
Have you ever had to be involved? I don't know, it just came to me, in like a hostage negotiation situation?
No, but I've been told that the way I teach is very reflective of hostage negotiators.
That was going to be my question. Yeah. Like, could this be, because somebody who does not teach the way you teach or look at this way, we can think of like some of the top negotiators that like come to my mind, but like they might not agree with you and your method, but you're saying, no, I have seen results with my method, even in serious scenarios as such. Well, that's incredible.
So Gary Nesner, who was the very first FBI hostage negotiator, is now a dear friend. He was somebody I absolutely looked up to, and everything about him, his philosophy. So I wrote about him, I mentioned him in my book. We actually met during the pandemic, and we've since become really good friends. But he like epitomizes that to me. And nobody would ever think like FBI hostage negotiator. But first of all, he's one of the kindest people you'll ever meet. But his magic, his success came from the fact that he always says, like, good or bad, it's still a person, right? At that moment, they're making a bad decision, but they're still a human being. And so appealing to that sense of order, right? Learning more about them, having the empathy is really the strategy, right? This is, they're far more likely to give into you that way. So yeah, and then there are the hostage negotiators that are not that way at all, right? So people have different styles, but yeah, I've been told that
your way works. It
It
absolutely,
works.
yeah.
But, and I want to be clear about this because there are other ways that work as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if my philosophy is the best negotiators are authentic, then you have to do you. Like you have to be who you are, right? It shouldn't be performative. And so to say that that other style doesn't work is silly because it does. And it works every day. Like I said, I don't necessarily love conflict, but I also love humanity. I love people. And I don't think by nature we have to make somebody feel worse to feel better. Like it doesn't make sense to me. But this is also my way is what has worked for people because I think that there are swaths of people, populations of people who gravitate towards this. And yet their entire lives, the only model they've seen of negotiators on TV or in the movies has been this like in your face, the bullying tactics, the really, really harsh, I win, you lose. So for that population who sees this modeled, what happens is that they believe at the end of the day, if I ask them, do you think you're a good negotiator? They'll say, absolutely not. I'll say, why? They like, because I can't do that. And so I speak to those people. I speak to that person who says, well, good for you. Like, let's work on you being more of you, not because the other person isn't good, but there's somebody in my class that appeals to more and let them be the best of themselves. But there are plenty of people who don't do that and they are just as successful. So there's a place for everybody.
Wow. How do we negotiate effectively in like a very distracted virtual world that we live in today?
So my book came out like right at the beginning of the lockdown. It was March of 2020. And one of the questions I'm always asked is, would you do anything differently, given sort of the way our world is, right? Distracted. And I always say, I would just lean into it harder. I want more of that because so much of my book is about paying attention to the person, like honoring your counterpart, being fully present, being mindful. And so I think we have greater challenges. We are in a distracted world, and all the studies show this that our attention span is diminishing by the day, and that technology and all these things, amplify what we as human beings already are, which is sort of really just not very present. Right? Plenty, again, academically studies to show this. You have to first of all create that space and say, for this hour, for these 2 hours, my phone is not going to be on. And if I get, texts and what have you, like notices through my Apple Watch or whatever it is, all that stuff, all that's going to go away. And I'm just going to be ever present because it has so much value. One, the person who's sitting across from you always knows. You can be as slick as you want to be. They can watch your pupils. They know that you're not looking anymore. They know that you're distracted. And so that immediately creates this sense of closure because, why would you want to be open when you're like, I'm competing for your attention? I don't want to compete for your attention. And then all the things that we miss, right? Like this notion of being emotionally intelligent is that I'm not just listening for your words. I'm listening for your emotions. I'm listening with my heart, my ears, my eyes. I'm listening to all of it, right? I'm listening through you. And so that person will consistently get more information, which is strategic, than the person who says, I'm just going to hear the stuff that's important. Or I'm sort of listening, but I'm really listening for things that'll help me ask the next question. And so it's incredibly strategic, but you have to be very, very conscious of this. You have to like completely lean into it because otherwise it's very difficult. And all those things take us away from the moment. We are most of the time not where our feet are. And that is not beneficial in a negotiation.
I love that thing, like be where your feet
Yeah.
are. And I never remember, but like, whenever it comes up, I'm like, yeah, that's where you want to be.
You want to be right here. And it has benefits in so many ways, but we have to be very conscious of it. It's not easy. Like the phones are extensions of ourselves. When I teach, there's no technology allowed in the classroom, so nobody can have their phone. Like zero. Like it could be 3 hours, it could be 6 hours. We're not having our phones and computers and what have you. So we're tech free for that time, and I think it makes a huge difference.
Well, they're forced to be present with you now.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we negotiate with ourselves in like our day-to-day stuff, like self-care, working out, whatever that may be? Because you said we negotiate every day, even with ourselves.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's every conversation, every decision. Do I go work out or do I sit on the couch and watch TV? Am I eating that? I know that's really good for me, or I'm going to eat this instead. Do I go see my parents or do I, there's always this push pull and this notion of, there's a few things. One is really understanding what's important and honoring those things, right? Like your health. So entrepreneurs are not very good at creating that sort of time for themselves, right? Because you're sort of constantly being pulled at. So, to go through your days putting importance on everything else but yourself. Your business may end up doing really well, but at the same time, the toxicity of that on your health, on your emotional health, your mental health, all of that.
Your relationships, your marriage,
your relation,
your
all of
kids.
it,
Yeah.
right? And so I always say, you're not going to be around. So if your goal is to take care of your whole family and you think you're going to provide for them by making this business successful, you may find yourself not being around for that, right? So, to prioritize yourself is a huge negotiations for you. And I recognize that, right? To take that time. I used to be like this. I used to feel like it's selfish to take that time and go to the gym or to go work out because it's like you are cutting something else. It took my health to realize that it wasn't selfish at all. It was the most detrimental thing in the world for me.
That's one of the hardest lessons, I think. And if I could say one thing over and over again, and people around me definitely know that I harp on this, is please don't, please get up and work out. Please eat right. Don't skip your, you know what I mean? Don't numb yourself with alcohol. Because you're right, entrepreneurs and business owners really do drive themselves into the ground.
Right.
But anyone who's dealt with health issues will tell you that was the worst lesson. That was the hardest lesson.
Yeah.
And I wish someone stopped me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I know what that feels like. And it's just that's not fun. If you could take anything back, I think that's one of the things where you wish you could go back and change.
Absolutely. It's the wake-up calls of all wake-up calls.
Yeah.
But
you don't want, nothing helps at that time. Your business doesn't help. Money, you don't want any of it at that point.
No.
It's moot. And you can't even be helpful for your family at that time.
Right. And you can't take it back. Some of us are privileged to be able to change the course of things. But if not, then you're thinking, why did I do that? Was it really worth it? The answer is always no.
Yep.
And I think that's, so going back to the negotiations we have with ourselves, I actually think that's one of the hardest ones because, especially we sort of may even shame ourselves into thinking oh, I can't do that. Especially moms are we have to take care of everybody, the kids, all of that. Then to be on the losing end of that negotiations with yourself is so toxic. And so, again, I think that, this whole notion of to be a great negotiator, you must be your own best advocate. And in negotiations with yourself, it's the same. You have to prioritize yourself.
Well, let's go in with the moms for a second. I am at that point where a lot of my friends have kids and newborns and whatnot, or 5-6-year-olds, and I see it all the time. You have this huge, massive change that's just occurred in your life. A new human has come into this world. You think you are expected to perform the same way it was before this kid was in your life, right? You are the perfect wife, cooking, cleaning, going to work, keeping up on that, family, friends, dogs, whatever it may be. You are still the giver. But after going through something like that, who is giving to you and taking care of you, and where are your boundaries? Things have to shift, things have to change, the variables have changed. But that mom guilt, or that feeling, it's almost like it got, I've seen in some of my girlfriends, it's gotten extreme. It didn't go hey, I need to take a minute. And this was a lot for me, these 9 months, especially the day of birth. I don't hear that. I don't see that. I see I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. Maybe in nature, there's something there that keeps you going, and I'm sure there is. I can't discount that. God does what he does, and I think women are more than capable of handling things, but I think that negotiation with themselves stays forever. And then that's where there comes a point where there's statistics to show that why is it that women are the ones who have the most autoimmune diseases?
Right.
why are they the ones that have these nervous system issues and these crash and burns, and you still see the husband fine, you
Right.
know, so to speak. The kids are older and this, but the mom still feels like she can't give to herself, even though the kids are older. What would you say to a woman, a mom?
I mean, I think so much of this has been dictated by society, so the rules that society has set for us. There's a certain sense of guilt, shame that comes with not fulfilling the promise to society, right? That's been expected of you. And then we internalize these things too, right? So even if people are like, well, nobody expected you to do that. Well, kind of, if everybody else is doing it, right? Or the woman that is an executive and she's got her kids at her school, and like every mom is bringing in homemade cookies and cakes and pies and this and that. And is it every game? Is it every, tournament? Is it every outing? Is it and when you can't do that because here you are working, and I know this because I've heard it so much, is that mom is going to think, maybe I'm not enough. Like maybe, what am I doing? How's this going to affect the kids? But and there are plenty of executives that have talked about this. There's celebrities, there's people, sort of public figures that we've heard this from, the women that say, but here's the thing, I won't be happy. And if I'm not happy, then that's the mom that the kids are getting as well. So it's going to come to a point where I've got to decide that what is actually really important. Is baking that cake really important, or can I get the store-bought cake and go to work and my kids see me doing something I really love, and therefore I can pour into them more. And you know what? I don't even love softball or baseball. So I don't really want to be at every game. And me being there is not, at the end of the day, going to make that much of a difference. If I'm a better provider for my kids and they can be proud of what I'm accomplishing, and they're going to see me not only happy but accomplished, and that's the model that I set for them, then you know what? That's a decision I'm going to make. But you have to be able to stand at that with conviction and say, this is my decision. But that can't be easy because you're going to have people that are whispering and judging and what have you.
You're condemned either way.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, it's like, what is that saying? Damned if you damned if you don't. Because then I also know women where they have chosen to go back to work right after giving birth because everybody else works.
Right.
Who am I to sit home and have this time with my child and be that home wife? Like, I should, I'm this, I went to school for this, and I do this, they're going to judge me, or they did it, so I have to do it. And it's like, no.
And if that person at that moment was like, I'm never going to have these years back with my kids, I really want to be at home.
Then she should.
Then you should be at home. Because we put, I think that this notion of being happy and fulfilled and joyful, and by the way, happy and joyful, those are sort of ephemeral. They're not like here to stay. But this notion of fulfillment, personal fulfillment, is sometimes served up with guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how dare I?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's just so silly. Like, if that's not our right, that's not our God-given right, then what is? And so if your fulfillment comes from taking off 5 years and watching your kids grow up, and those become the happiest days of your life, then there should be no punishment for that. There should be no guilt for that, right? Because again, your kids will see you as a happier person. You will be a better person in that relationship. But there is this constant sort of, and some of it is in our heads.
I was going to say, I think a lot of it is like self-inflicted.
Yeah, absolutely.
I forget, the word is not coming to me, but like a self-inflicted stressor,
right?
Whereas
absolutely.
like you probably, if you voiced how you felt, your family and friends would support you, and your kid as they get older would understand. But at the same time, I also think you mentioned fulfillment. Why do we think that us fulfilling ourselves is taking something away from someone else?
Right. It's a really interesting thing. Like the word power is the same thing. I always tell people, like, you should stand in your power. Mm-hmm. And people like get a little cringy around it because I feel like when people hear the word, they think if I am in my power, if I'm standing in my power, it is at the expense of you. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's not. Mm-hmm. That's not taking away. It's not at the expense of someone. It is to the benefit of you. And those two things can be mutually inclusive. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that when we don't, then we're succumbing to this notion of, and you don't deserve that, or you don't have the right to it. And then there comes all that other stuff, the guilt, the, oh my God, I should be, and I'm a bad person. And No, and we have to make decisions at the end of the day. And when we don't choose ourselves, when we don't bet on ourselves, then I believe that so many other things fall apart. Whether it's health, whether it's your mental health, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your friendships, whether it's in your family, you know, the resentment that comes with that. So yeah, it's...
Since we're on the topic of women for a second, I think I read a thing where it said only 7% of women negotiate their first salaries, and that can cost you like upwards of like $500,000 over time. Why do you think that is? And men are like only like a small percentage.
Yeah, so it's not anymore, which is really good news.
Okay.
It used to be that women did not negotiate, and all the studies showed this, did not negotiate their first salaries. There's a famous study that came out of Carnegie Mellon, the High School of Public Health, and it showed that like the graduating class of that year, that the percentage of women that negotiated their first salaries, their salary for their first job offer out of school, was something like in the 20s, and the men was like in the 50 percentile. And that absolutely has this impact because it's compounded, right? Like that means every year thereafter, you're starting lower, and therefore over time, right? So that cost basis, the loss of it. So studies now show us that women are actually negotiating more, and as much as men for sure. And that makes sense because more women are being educated, more women than men are graduating colleges. There's a whole sort of natural order to this, right? So more women are negotiating their opening salaries. Unfortunately, the more we do it, we're also getting rejected as well, right? So we're being turned down. But I think the highlight in this is that we're not holding back, that we are negotiating, and that there's still societal misconceptions. There's still the being judged. There's still, you know, acting outside of what society believes how you should act, or when you should act, or when you should negotiate, when you shouldn't negotiate. So all that persists. But the good news is that those trends are changing. And I think that with that also comes, and I want to say, I don't know, because the world is so crazy right now. But what we're also seeing is that there are more people looking at the way women negotiate as the model for negotiations. You know, so we're in like leadership models and negotiations models, sort of this relationship-based negotiations, that really putting the importance of sort of outcomes based on that, as opposed to what we had talked about earlier, which is that win-lose, you know. So we're seeing some of those trends change. I hope they stay as such, because it you know, like the saying goes, the answer is always no if you don't ask.
Right.
And so if you just take what's given to you, you know, then where's that going to get you? And unfortunately, it has long-term effects.
Right. What's one thing people can start to do to negotiate without fear, if they had to start somewhere?
To maybe reimagine what negotiations is, which is what we've been talking about all along. Like just the reimagining of it, the changing how you perceive negotiations, and really understanding that no, this is just a conversation. This is something I do every single day. That this is life. This is the language of life. And I think that when we do that, it takes so much of the fear away, because you're not thinking about this being, again, this conflict-ridden, not knowing the outcomes. People are like, well, I'm afraid of the unknown. I don't know how much information they have. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And I'm like, that's just life.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, we can't control certain things, but to not exercise your voice, to not speak to your truth, to not fight for something that's important to you, to sit on the sidelines, like, isn't that more consequential? And isn't that something that sort of notion of regret, shouldn't that be something we fear so much more? You know, so you do it, you get a no, you live with it, you go, life goes on.
It's not so daunting.
It's not.
You need it that way, right?
Yeah. But reimagining, I think this like changing of one student one day said, well, what if we call it something else? And I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I want you to understand that there should be no fear that's carried in this word, that there's power, that there's this is truth. So to change it just means like you're just feeding that fire. But I refuse to do that. Like I want people to think of negotiations as that there's nothing more powerful, that this truly sets you free, that this is your truth.
Do you think there's a generation, just like blanket statement, that's actually better at negotiating than others?
I think this may be the generation. I think the Gen Zers.
Really? I had the opposite thought.
Yeah, I mean, ask me tomorrow, I may agree with you. But for right now,
that's
as I'm
right.
thinking about it, as I'm thinking about this, so there's good and bad. There is this, they have grown up with social media, right? And so they have access to information and it's not daunting to get that kind of, they can learn about anything about anybody at any time, right? And social media has given you access to that. But this is also a generation that I think has so much courage I never had at their age. I think they're far more likely to negotiate. I think that values are very important to them. I think they're purpose driven, for good or for bad. So I think that actually is a benefit for them. Now, are there things that a little rough on the edges, but maybe too courageous at times, people say. But I don't know. I have so much hope in them. I think that they're less likely to sit out and let things just happen. I think they're far more likely to act. So in some ways, just that bravery, that sense of courage makes them much more likely to be better negotiators.
What about between men and women?
Oh, I just think women are exceptional negotiators. Women make great negotiators. For every reason that we've thought we weren't great negotiators is exactly why we are great negotiators. I think having the emotional intelligence, I think being problem solvers, I think the notion of investing in people, even the caretaking, of the sense of empathy and curiosity. We've bought into this lie.
What we were told.
Yeah. And I think that actually the when women realize that they are actually, that we're made for this. I think you'll see more women leaders in politics. You'll see more executives, but it's sort of, we can't buy into that lie. But I think we're exceptional negotiators.
When I think of traditional negotiating, in the traditional sense, right, in the business place, what I think silence is power. Do you, in your method, believe that silence can be power?
Yes. Silence allows you to think and not react. And it makes people very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, they think they're losing now.
Yeah. But you're really just, you can think more critically if, you don't have to talk all the time. So the less you talk, the more you learn. But I'm also not of the opinion, because I know some people think that the person who's, another myth, the person who says the least does better. And I don't agree with that at all, because it's a conversation, it's an exchange. But I do believe that silence has its power, because you don't have to fight for everything. That sometimes you can really just better understand, and you can take things in. You can give the other person the space to express themselves. But again, because it makes people uncomfortable, it ends up being actually leverage for you, because some people will just start,
Talking away. Yep. As we wrap this up, what is one message that you hope that listeners will remember long after this conversation ends?
I think today, I would say curiosity. There's a lot of value that we place on people who are like uber confident, that lead that way, that live in the space of assuredness and certainty. And I think there's a lot to be gained when, of course you want to be confident. Of course you want to be always prepared. But there's a lot of value in saying, but I don't know everything. Walking through this world of ours with a desire to learn, and knowing that answers are not always possible. But to be okay in that space of vulnerability, that you don't always have to know. But to be curious sets a path for you. And it allows people to connect. It allows you to accept people and not come at them from a place of judgment. I think it'll feed to this, it'll lessen the opportunities for conflict and increase our ability to connect with people. Because, what we're living in now is this notion of we're all different. We're not similar. That division has created strength for a lot of people, right? And people are getting power from that. And yet curiosity, I think, says, well, wait a minute, maybe if I learn, and you find out you're really not all that different, that there's so many similarities and there's such a beauty in that. But, we so rush to make up our minds and be certain and be sure and judge that I think it's lost. And I just think a life of curiosity is a life fulfilled. I think we are happier. And I hope that we can sort of hold on to that and not lose it over time. So yeah, I think today I would say curiosity.
Mori, you've shared so much wisdom and knowledge with us today. But if people wanted to read more about this and learn more about, I know you have a book called Bring Yourself, but are there any other resources you can point our viewers to?
I'm on Instagram. If you go to my website, which is just my name, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is
your
actually
Instagram
quite good.
just your name as well?
It's M. Taheripour.
Okay.
Yeah, and my website is just my name. But I have a newsletter, which I love. Talk about, an act of love. That is definitely it. But it's great because all that I couldn't cover in the book. So it's like, issues du jour or more sort of complicated perspectives that I have are there. So it's free.
Personally, where do you see this going? Like, are there new avenues you want to explore for yourself beyond educating? Like, what is your 5-year plan?
Oh, 5-year plan. Oh my God, I'm lucky if I have a 5-month plan. Teaching is exhausting for somebody like me. I'm an empath. So it takes everything out of me sometimes. I like coaching. I love working with female entrepreneurs.
Is that one-on-one? Is that what you're referring to? Okay.
So more like high performance type work. So I love that. I don't want to work as hard to get my message out. I feel like I can do it in other ways. I don't know. I think the world is my oyster at this point. I'm figuring it out. But I think I want to work. I'm actually exploring working with maybe private equity firms or investors and really sort of being able to bring my skills to their founders and
wow.
So that I think that would be a lot of fun. So I don't know. I'm sort of playing around with it.
Cool.
I'm exhausted though from all the travel, so I'd like not to be constantly traveling and working for a long term.
You're aware of it. I love that for you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mori. This was incredible.
It was great.
Yeah, this was amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.